Good evening, and welcome to Graceland. I'm standing in front of our music room, which brings back so many memories, both emotional and sentimental.
I give you my heart today, tomorrow, and forever.
There may never have been a more public man than Elvis Presley. But behind these gates of Graceland, Elvis was a very private man. So when the family initially considered allowing intimate access into Elvis's private life, well, we were reluctant and we were very cautious. But we feel now was the right time to share the Elvis we knew and loved with a whole new generation. Elvis the husband, Elvis the father, Elvis the friend. Tonight our family opens our home and our hearts to your family to share Elvis by the Presleys.
Holy smoke, the land sakes alive, I never thought this could happen to me. Yeah.
Well, the first time I heard an Elvis record was when my father brought home Elvis's first album.
That record had just come in, and people were saying, oh, this is this new singer. And it was driving the teenagers crazy, you might say. So I figured, well, I'm going to buy one for her.
And he came home, brought the album, and he said, here, you know, this guy named Elvis Presley, I don't even think that he could pronounce his name.
I thought it was a made-up name.
So he brought it home to me, and that's when I heard Hound Dog.
You ain't seen us
It was really, really cute, and I, started hearing more and more about him, and this is at the height of his career.
Elvis Presley is the fastest rising young singer in the entertainment industry today.
Every day it seemed like there was some kind of news about, Elvis Presley.
feel so bad.
That he wasn't presentable, it was a bad influence on kids and the generation.
It was a shock in the first place to hear about him and see what was going on.
I will say that there are people that are going to like you and people that don't like you, regardless of what business you're in or what you do. You cannot please everyone.
These men come down here to find out my reasons on rock and roll music and why I preach against it, and I believe with all of my heart that it is a contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
I don't see how they could think they would contribute to juvenile delinquency. Someone solely singing and dancing. I don't see that.
You want the truth?
Yeah.
I was with all the other mothers. We were against him. And I was thinking seriously that I thought it was harmful for the girls. And I was ready to have Elvis marked against him.
News got out that he was on Ed Sullivan.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, Elvis Presley.
And my father told me that I couldn't watch it, that I had to go to my room.
Well, honey, I love you, I know too much.
Well, obviously, it's the worst thing that you could do to a kid is tell them that they can't watch.
I want the real love, I know your touch. Hey, I can't hold you, I know too much.
And so I went to my room, but I walked through the crack of the door.
Well, rock and roll music, if you like it, if you feel it, you can't help but move to it. That's what happens to me. I can't help it. I mean, I have to move around. I can't stand still. I've tried it, and I can't do it.
Well, through the years, Elvis always said that, boy, when I did that, I couldn't get away with that. And this was just about 10 years down the road.
Man, I was tame compared to what they do now. Are you kidding? I didn't do anything. We just jiggle, you know.
You're in the Army now. Gets a rock and roll beat with the appearance among the recruits at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, of the #1 rock and roller himself, Elvis. Elvis switches to a new beat. Up, 2, 3, 4.
my father was transferred to Wiesbaden, Germany, and the word was out that Elvis was in Germany.
In 1958, he went to Germany in service. I went over there with him.
We were all really saddened by this thing because he was going to have to go away for 2 years, you know, or maybe longer. We weren't sure. And I know when he left, I tried to take him off the train. I was reaching for him, and I couldn't touch him. He was already too far away, you know. It was like, oh, God, this is killing me.
Private Elvis Presley is bound for the 3rd Armored Division in Germany, and he bids all his female followers a fond adieu.
I got to hop to the creek for a occupation GI blues.
We get over there.
Actually, they only got over there about 2 months before I left.
I made a comment like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go meet Elvis Presley. Just a comment, never ever, you know, thought about it again. And then there was a guy who was there, and he said, do you like Elvis Presley? And I said, well, who doesn't like Elvis? Yeah, I do. And he says, you know, he's a friend of mine, and I go over, you know, a lot on the weekends, my wife and I. And would I, you know, like to go? And it was out of the blue, and I said I had to ask my parents.
A young teenage girl in tune with the world and that type of music at that time. Mm-hmm. How were we able to deny you to do something like that?
You know, I just think it was an opportunity, you know, to meet, you know, Elvis, and it never even occurred that it would get beyond that.
So the arrangements were made to go on, I think, like on a Friday night, and there I was, trying to figure out what to wear.
One night with you.
I didn't come with any experience of what a preconceived idea of what the king of rock and roll was like. I had nothing to compare it to. I wasn't a calculating young girl. I was just I just put myself there and just took it as what it was. It took me by surprise how very normal he was. There were a couple of girls there and some guys, and I looked over, and you know, Elvis was sitting in a chair, and he was breathtaking. I mean, he was truly, you know, much more handsome in life than even on the screen, which is hard to believe. And I was introduced to him, and he got up, and he said, well, what do we have here, you know? And the first thing he did was start teasing me about my nose. I already felt very much like a child there. Everyone was in their 20s, and here I was, and I was afraid to tell my age. So I concealed it until he asked me, you know, well, what grade I was in. I told him I was in the 9th grade, but he didn't put 2 and 2 together at all. He joked around, he got up and he played piano, and it was a great evening. I never expected him to ask me back.
But then the next thing I know, Elvis called, and he wanted to see Priscilla. And we both couldn't understand the whole situation, and we were arguing back and forth that should we, shouldn't we, because after all, you know, how old she was and everything else.
Your teddy bear, put a chain around my neck and leave me anywhere. Oh, let me be, oh, let it be. Oh, teddy bear, oh, let me be, oh, let it be your teddy bear. I just want to be your teddy bear.
When Elvis came into my life, they didn't know what to do with it. They honestly didn't. This was bigger than they could ever imagine.
I wasn't impressed about the whole thing at that time. I couldn't understand the interest there.
Well, meeting one another's families was important too, and like meeting his father.
Once we met Elvis, he was so polite and so charming. I mean, it was just like he was, everything was sir and ma'am and all that. He was very, very polite.
Just the way I was brought up, you know, my surroundings, my mother and my father, and I'm proud of the way that I was brought up to believe and to treat people. And I've always treated people just like I would like to be treated.
He was a good old Southern boy, and that was the attraction, you know, also to my parents.
When he came over, and I was asleep, it was late, Mother and Dad woke me up, and and woke him up and go, Elvis is here. You want to meet Elvis? So I was kind of, okay, you know, kind of got up kind of sleepy, and I remember going in, and there he was, you know, just really friendly, you know, and he even got down. I remember him getting down on my level.
Well, he impressed me because he seemed like a genuine person that was really concerned about a lot of things. That's when my feelings for him changed.
Well, I liked Elvis because lots of times I'd tell my stories and he'd listen to me, and that impressed me.
But you gave him the third degree?
I was just pretending to be, what do they say, an old-fashioned father.
You know, when I would go over, my father wanted to know, well, what was going on, and what were you doing, and why are you interested in my daughter? I guess you would wonder, what would a 24-year-old guy have in common with a 14-year-old girl? Now, knowing Elvis, it all kind of fits in place, you know, and why, you know, I was a girl who spoke English. We had a lot in common. Actually, it was our second date, and I told him how much I liked Mario Lanza, you know, that I played, you know, the student prince over and over and over again. I got into his life, and never thinking that Elvis was an opera lover, ever. So it's just funny how we kind of like, we had something in common other than rock and roll. So maybe he saw a bit of maturity in me and you know, was drawn to that.
I like to talk to somebody and, you know, get things off my chest because it's very seldom that I have an opportunity to talk to anybody.
Within our conversations that we had alone in Germany, you know, he revealed a lot to me.
It takes a while. I mean, it takes a while to find someone or to get to trust somebody. I look for a lot of things now that I used to wouldn't have looked for, you know, just certain characteristics, a sense of humor, just a lot of things. Their understanding of me and my way of thinking.
There was a very soft, very vulnerable Elvis that I knew in the Army in those days. You know, we were 6 months basically together. And, you know, he talked a lot about his mother, a lot about his family, about the loss of his mother.
A lot of good experiences and some bad ones.
Loving you.
Like losing my mother while I was in the Army, although I think that things like that, as tragic as they are, tend to make you a little better human being, really.
He used to always say he didn't know how he was going to be able to go, how he can go back to Graceland, and what it was going to be like. It would never be the same without the presence of his mother there. And, you know, he was reluctant in even going there.
My most favorite possession that I have of Elvis's is a letter that he wrote to my mother and father and me when he was in Germany. He was mostly talking about being lonely and missing his mother, and that he was up in the mountains on maneuvers, and he cried a lot, and, you know, things like that, and that he wished he could be home with us, and that he was thinking back on the Christmas before when, you know, we were all together with his mother.
I feel very fortunate that I got to know him during that time. And I'm sure even before, you know, the death of his mother, he was an entirely different Elvis then, because from stories that were told to me, he was happy-go-lucky, he was you know, had a wonderful spirit of play, he was just on top of the world. So, you know, I met him right after that had happened, and I saw a very sad Elvis, an Elvis who was very insecure and very unsure of where he was going to, you know, where he was going to be when he got back.
Have 2 years of sobering Army life changed your mind about rock and roll? Sobering Army life. No, it hasn't. It hasn't changed my mind, because I was in tanks for a long time, you see. And they rock and roll quite a bit.
He worried over that, maybe perhaps when he came back, that things wouldn't be the